kadang-kadang rasa kita yang membantu seorang yang OKU atau seorang yang neurodivergent, tapi sebenarnya ada peluang untuk yang membantu tu belajar kemahiran tambahan, belajar untuk menjadi seorang pemimpin, belajar untuk bagaimana nak mengatasi masalah.
Nirav, when he was in year 6, the teacher told me that because they were preparing for checkpoints kan, so kena jadilah berdisiplin sikit, buat kerja lebih, and so she was able by that point to differentiate when Nirav was throwing tantrums or just trying to avoid work, so she would get a bit firm, and it's his classmates who used to go up to her and said, "Teacher, you can't say that to Nirav."
Setiap sekolah, setiap learning setting or learning environment, mereka ada proses-proses mereka tertentu. As much as possible, yes, they individualize. Tetapi benda macam dysgraphia is not very common. Walaupun dalam sekolah yang in private schools, maybe mereka pernah dengar, tetapi tak semestinya cikgu tu biasa.
Assalamualaikum. Hi everybody. Kita hari ini akan merakamkan episod ke-42 Kita Family, ya. Dan kita sebenarnya akan membuat bahagian kedua. So part 2 iaitu sambungan dari topik kami episod ke-40, di mana kita membincangkan bagaimana untuk menyokong dan menjadi sebahagian daripada komuniti yang mempunyai individu-individu neurodivergent ataupun OKU. Sebelum itu, seperti biasa, saya akan menceritakan sedikitlah tentang apa yang secara umumnya dibincangkan di Kita Family Podcast. Di sini kami membincangkan perihal yang berkaitan dengan makna serta kepentingan hidup bermasyarakat, menghargai keunikan serta kepelbagaian sesama kita, meraihkan masyarakat yang berbilang agama, kaum, kepercayaan, rupa dan juga keupayaan, dan kita menghargai hidup secara bermasyarakat, hidup secara inklusif, di mana setiap kepentingan mana-mana individu, segenap lapisan masyarakat akan diambil kira, termasuk mereka yang kurang atau berkelainan keupayaan. Okay, so let's get on with episode 42. Kita ada permintaan untuk melanjutkan perbincangan ini untuk merangkumi dua kategori yang lain. Kalau dulu kita telah menyebut tentang bagaimana nak memberi bantuan sebagai seorang ahli masyarakat, kalau kita jumpa dengan kenalan ataupun di tempat-tempat awam and things like that, dan kita juga membincangkan bagaimana sebagai seorang ahli keluarga ataupun kawan dan sahabat yang baik kepada keluarga yang mempunyai individu neurodivergent, macam mana kita nak membantu dan menyokong mereka. Kali ini kita akan menyebut tentang dua kategori yang lain. Satunya di tempat kerja dan yang kedua di sekolah atau institusi pengajian. So we are going to talk about this today because masa kita berbincang di episod ke-40, mungkin fokus lebih kepada keluarga as a whole. Kali ini bila kita menyebut tempat kerja dan juga di sekolah, kita akan mungkin lebih memberi perhatian kepada menyokong individu-individu yang kita sebutkan. So it's directly towards the person that is needing the extra support, right? Okay, so untuk episod kita kali ini, the same four, unfortunately kakak kita tak ada. So di studio bersama-sama dengan saya, Desri.
Hai, salam sejahtera.
Dan di sebelah Desri, Anit.
Hello, apa khabar?
Dan dari Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, hai Didi.
Hai, Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera.
Ya, dan saya Nuri. So kita berempat akan mengupas perbincangan yang seterusnya. Anit, I want to start with you today. I think let's talk about school. Yeah. Maybe you can share with us dan cerita kalau kita nak menyebut tentang peringkat sekolah apa dan bagaimana kita dapat membantu sebagai ahli komuniti di sekolah tersebut.
Okay, sebagai ahli komuniti sekolah, I think what is very important is kita janganlah membantah kalau ada anak yang neurodivergent atau kurang upaya nak masuk dalam kelas tu. I think there's a lot of misconception out there, and we hope that with this podcast, a lot of it goes away. But it is good even for children who are neurotypical to have someone who's different in the class, and give it a shot, and don't membantah sebelum tahu atau mengetahui anak itu. So that is a message I want to get out there, because a lot of times you will learn from the children. The neurodivergent children will learn from other children as well. So whatever prejudice, let's try to minimize that and give it a shot first. That would be something that I really would want to see the classroom scene changing.
Ya, saya memang setuju. Sebab kita kadang-kadang rasa kita yang membantu seorang yang OKU atau seorang yang neurodivergent. Tapi sebenarnya ada peluang untuk yang membantu tu belajar kemahiran tambahan, belajar untuk menjadi seorang pemimpin, belajar untuk bagaimana nak mengatasi masalah, membina
sifat empathy.
Sifat empathy, keupayaan yang sekarang ataupun kemahiran yang kita sering sebutkan sekarang yang menjadi begitu penting, which is like teamwork, right? And
higher order thinking skills.
Higher order thinking skills. So many things that you can learn from that situation. So it's not just that ini untuk manfaat kononnya yang kita nak membantu, kan? Yeah. So
I actually remember a story where my middle child went to inclusive government school for a short period, and there was a boy who was neurodivergent in his class, who used
sekolah PPKI, kan?
Sekolah PPKI.
Okay.
And he and because he had a brother who was neurodivergent, he was, I think, a bit more comfortable dealing with the child compared to others. And he used to come back and tell me that, this child can do it, mommy. And he volunteered to be his buddy or partner in an English project.
Okay.
So they rehearsed, and he came back so disappointed because hari tu cikgu suruh prepare, lepas tu budak ni dah boleh buat, dia orang rehearse 3 kali, 4 kali, tapi cikgu kata tak ada masa. So like, as a child that puts in an effort, dah membantu seseorang lagi untuk capai to that tahap, and then tiba-tiba tak ada masa. And he said, I just pray that tomorrow when cikgu asks, he still remembers, I think I need to start all over again. So I thought that was a very nice story. And when he was actually shifting schools on the day where it was his last day, this same boy, I left with tears in my eyes because he had gone up to the whiteboard and penned a note for my boy. And he had drawn it. And that was his way of communicating.
Oh, that's nice. So, kalau tak sempat do the presentation ke apa pun, clearly ada, impression was left, right?
The bond.
So macam it's so worth it.
Yeah.
I hope that Tarish then noticed that
He did.
It was meaningful.
Yeah.
Sungguh pun, apa-apa sebenarnya objektif terawal tu tak tercapai lah, tapi clearly was really good.
And I have one more little story because Nirav, when he was in year 6, the teacher told me that because they were preparing for checkpoints, kan, so kena jadilah berdisiplin sikit, buat kerja lebih. And so she was able by that point to differentiate when Nirav was throwing tantrums or just trying to avoid work, so she would get a bit firm. And it's his classmates who used to go up to her and say, "Teacher, you can't say that to Nirav." And I thought that was beautiful. But then she had to explain to them that, hey, don't you want him to do well like you guys? And say, yeah, he can do it. So can't you encourage? No, teacher, we'll encourage him. You don't say that. So when I heard things like that during parents-teachers meeting, it was really heartwarming. So it was both ways.
I think it's so important to hear that. Especially baru-baru ni kita banyak dengar kisah-kisah bully dan sebagainya. Sebenarnya ada juga macam cerita macam ni yang memang kita nak dengar. Kan? That is, the nice things that also happen when you go to school. So school doesn't have to be a terrible place. And then of course I think the other subject is, well, if we talk about bullying, what can we do about that? Didi, Desiree, this would be connected to this thing also, kan? Yeah.
We want to talk about bullying or
no? I'm just wondering if you had some. Well, we do want to talk about support at schools, but I don't know. Maybe okay. How about I am the one that round that off? I think I was just going to say that. Bila kita menyebut tentang anak OKU dan neurodivergent di konteks sekolah, memang lazim perkara bullying ni akan kerap kita dengar. So I think that if you know this situation is coming, you are part of that school. Katalah you are a parent and all that. Please speak to your child. Talk about it. Talk about the issue. Sungguh pun bukan anak kita yang telah menjadi bully, tapi ceritakan mengapa ini adalah sesuatu yang tidak patut dilakukan. Play a role. Kalau ada mesyuarat PIBG ke sebagai contoh, pergilah. Support anti-bullying. So these are things macam that can come up in school. And then selain daripada kisah bully pun, antara yang kita boleh lakukan di dalam sekolah untuk menyokong pelajar-pelajar neurodivergent and all that is ambillah berat untuk belajar juga sedikit sebanyak tentang tentang individu-individu yang mempunyai neurodivergence yang berbeza dari kita, dan bantulah anak kita juga supaya dapat lebih maklumat dan pengetahuan yang tepat, dan supaya kita dapat galakkan dia bantu like the classmate, things like that for example. So kita nak galakkan anak kita untuk membantu secara direct. So for us it's indirect lah. Kita tak ada di sekolah. Of course kita boleh membantu kalau kita dah kenal ibu bapa anak tersebut. So kalau ada peluang jumpa di sekolah and things like that, then you can be friendly, of course. Bantu seperti yang kita dah sebut di episod ke-40. Tapi kita boleh mengajar anak kita supaya menjadi seseorang yang prihatin, supaya menjadi seorang yang boleh menjadi rakan yang baik. I think the education lah. Educate ourselves, educate our kids, and that's I think how we can help dalam konteks macam ni lah where the bullying comes up. Yeah, sorry. So I answered my own question, but yes.
Can I say that as a parent, when you have whether you are a parent of a neurotypical child or a neurodivergent child, be open to engagement and answering questions and speaking about your child. It's like how you would do if it was a regular school. You would say, oh, anak I suka ni, anak you suka apa, just to nak berkawan, right? So that same conversation can happen when you're trying to include a child that is different.
Yeah, and bring up that topic.
Yeah, dia suka makan apa? That it's as simple as that, and that gets a conversation going.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Because some of these children like to eat the same thing every day or every other day because of their sensory issues, and then and if they go to school, sometimes as a friend you can get them to try something different, and you're probably more convincing than a parent would be to a neurodivergent child.
So this is exactly what happened with Hans.
Okay.
Right? So we don't have the benefit of being in the public school. He's in a private center. So he goes to school with children like him.
Okay.
Neurodivergent jugalah, mainly autistic kids. And trust me, they have their own kawan-kawan or friends that they may not. Dynamic mereka tersendirilah. So when it came to eating, he used to be a picky eater, and memang cikgu di sekolah Hans has been with us sejak Hans 2 tahun. So memang sangat familiar dengan Hans picky eating lah.
Okay.
So cikgu ni lah yang the one who texted me very excited the first time Hans makan pizza di sekolah. And so these are the experiences that our kids can get in when they're not with us. So I think saya pernah bercerita before tentang picky eating. Sometimes it cannot be the mom or the dad or the main caregiver to introduce the food, tetapi dalam setting bersama kawan-kawan, bersama cikgu-cikgu yang dia sayang, Hans boleh je makan apa-apa. Actually,
to make sure that Hans is included lah kan.
yes.
So kalau ada apa-apa aktiviti ke parti ke apa kat sekolah, janganlah terlupa
exactly.
ataupun sengaja macam tak mengambil kira anak yang neurodivergent tu dengan andaian bahawa dia
he's
pun tak
picky
suka
ke,
or dia tak
makan.
minat or whatever. So
Yes.
terus macam okay lah, tak payahlah.
He's offered. Yeah. So on
So
that
don't do that,
note,
right? Yeah.
before we jump to Didi, if I can quickly share another thing that has helped Hans dekat sekolah, sebab baru-baru ni pun saya ada ceritakan tentang the additional diagnosis that he has, which is dyspraxia and dysgraphia. So memanglah kena berbincang dengan sekolah and all that to make the accommodation. So I want to credit the school lah. Memang diorang dengar pendapat dari ibu bapa to change the way they teach. Kan, memang we always have this discussion dalam sekolah biasa or sekolah PPKI, cikgu kena ubah cara. We assume the private center that it's all hunky-dory, it's memang there, but actually I just want to say, as a parent, we still need to have that conversation with the school. Sebab setiap sekolah, setiap learning setting or learning environment, mereka ada proses-proses mereka tertentu. As much as possible, yes, they individualize. Tetapi benda macam dysgraphia is not very common. Walaupun dalam sekolah yang in private schools, maybe mereka pernah dengar, tetapi tak semestinya cikgu tu biasa.
Beri definisi sikit dysgraphia.
So dysgraphia is more of language processing disorder di mana mereka boleh faham. So for those who are verbal dan boleh bercakap, memang mereka sangat fasih bercakap tetapi mempunyai masalah to translate what they are talking into written form. So it can be from a writing essay perspective, memang sangat susah writing sentences, and in some maybe more severe cases, in case in point dengan Hans, handwriting. Susah nak pegang pensel. Tetapi so the challenge is we thought that Hans tak suka mengira, Hans tak suka menulis, Hans tak boleh mengeja. Tetapi bila diberi keyboard or an iPad to type, boleh je dia mengeja. Actually, it's just that dia to hold the pencil, kesian lah. I pun tengok dia buat kerja rumah.
So there's a brain connected to a motor function thing.
Yes,
Okay.
because it's also related to the family lah. Dyspraxia, where is a motor coordination disorder. So normally when there's dyspraxia, there's a possibility of comorbidities dengan dyslexia, dyscalculia or dysgraphia or any of these family, because the motor coordination is already impacted. So when it comes to handwriting, sometimes it's not just the dyspraxia, it's dysgraphia, because translating it to written word.
So back to the teachers, Desri nak menyebut tentang perkara ni untuk memberi penghargaan kepada cikgu-cikgu yang mengambil berat dan prihatin dan ingin mengetahui dengan lebih tentang perkembangan Hans, right? So that is a message to the teachers out there. Tak semestinya semua kita tahu, majority cikgu-cikgu pada peringkat latihan atau peringkat mereka ke IPTE belajar untuk menjadi seorang cikgu, tak banyak yang cover in the curriculum mengenai pendidikan khas. Just doesn't mean that you will learn about special education as a teacher unless that is your interest, right? But if you once you know that there is this kid in your class, please take that extra step. And ini memang kita dah pernah sebut lah. Desri, I'm going to come back to you because I want to hear about the experiences and the things you know from the context in IPTA. But I'm going to jump to Didi for the moment.
Okay.
Didi, we want to hear your thoughts.
Well, banyak kan perkembangan dalam pendidikan, dunia pendidikan ni take times lah. Jadi kalau kita cerita tentang 5 tahun dulu kita anak saya masuk sekolah rendah, of course the support is not enough yet, and kebanyakannya bergantung kepada ibu bapa, di mana kita tahu profil anak kita yang memilih sekolah bagaimana yang sudah ada kesesuaian lah untuk anak kita. So betul, knowledge is very important, kita sendiri tahu, so kita boleh carilah sumber sekolah yang macam mana, keadaan macam mana. Dan selain daripada communication, social communication antara kanak-kanak dan anak kita kan, anak autistik, of course budak-budak ni dia tak ada prejudice, dia tak ada macam autistik tak nak kawan lah. Kalau kita dedahkan daripada kecil, dia boleh terima yang setiap kanak-kanak tu berbeza. Sebab yang jadi bulinya selalu bila dia rasa budak ni lain lah, tapi dia tak faham kenapa lain. But once kita terangkan, okay, macam saya pun pernah ada instances that Afia dibuli di sekolah rendah, dan kita jumpalah budak tu, kita cakap lah, oh Afia is autistic, she needs more support, janganlah buat macam ni dekat dia apa semua, just simple cakap. And after that budak tu yang lebih care pada Afia. So communication lah. Dan satu lagi perkara yang kita perlu, not just in school, I think in general kan, macam yang kita dah belajar dalam spell training, we so much of nak bagi anak kita skill supaya anak kita boleh survive kan di sekolah, di mana-mana. Anak kita perlu belajar ni, anak kita perlu ada skill begini, tapi sebenarnya persekitaran pun sangat penting. So support dari segi keadaan fizikal, classroom macam mana, sekolah macam mana, apa yang mengganggu daripada segi sensory. So itu sangat spesifik lah antara setiap kadang-kadang autistik tu. Ada yang tak tahan bunyi, ada yang mungkin tak selesa dengan keadaan terlalu panas ke. So kalau semua orang lebih understanding, boleh menerima yang setiap manusia ni berbeza. Kita tak payah letak label, tak payah ada diagnosis pun. Kalau kita boleh rasa empathy, boleh tahu yang ada orang yang tak tahan panas, ada orang tak suka bunyi bising, ada orang makan nasi lemak tak suka sambal, ada orang suka sambal sangat pedas. Those things kan. Jadi kita boleh empathize lah. Janganlah macam rasa bila lain tu sangat susah. Dan sebenarnya banyak perkara yang kalau kita gunakan teknik-teknik yang telah kita belajar sesuai untuk anak autistik, sesuai untuk individual yang autistik, contohnya communication yang lebih jelas, guna visual schedule dan sebagainya, dia membantu bukan sekadar mereka yang autistik, tapi membantu semua orang. Sebab saya pernah baru-baru ni lah jumpa satu video viral seorang guru kan, dia marah lah, dia rasa cakap, kenapa tanya lagi dalam WhatsApp group, kan sudah diberitahu, asyik tanya. Dan saya terfikir, kalaulah di dalam kelas kan ada satu nota yang dah beritahu lah, hari Isnin pakai baju apa, hari Rabu pakai baju apa, jelas benda tu ada di situ, dan budak-budak boleh nampak hari-hari kan. Mungkin tak adalah lagi yang bertanya, kuranglah yang bertanya kan. So communication tu perlu lebih jelas, sebab bukan semua orang tu mudah untuk mendapatkan maklumat dari segi visual. Ada yang lebih prefer auditory, ada yang kalau kita cakap dari segi auditory, kita bagi arahan verbal je, dia kurang untuk faham, dia perlukan arahan bertulis. So all this kan not just adaptation, sebenarnya memudahkan lah. Macam zaman COVID dulu kan, kita ada all this infographic, macam mana cara nak basuh tangan, macam mana graf apa semua kan. It was so easy, and kita tak cakap pun ini untuk supaya golongan autistik faham, sebab tu kita buat macam ni. Tak, it was for general population, and semua orang sangat faham bila dipersembahkan fakta macam tu kan.
Universal approach, universal design.
Yes.
Yeah,
of course.
So, dah sampai masa lah ada adaptation. Dan kan classroom kan, kalau kita masa dulu-dulu tu cikgu nak menang anugerah kelas paling ceria, masa dengan lapan sangat warna-warni dengan warna langsir yang sangat warna-warni tu. Kalau kita kata dia tidak membantu ataupun membuatkan anak autistik overwhelmed, bila kita tukar dengan suasana yang lebih simple, lebih tenang, ada calming effect tu, dia bukan hanya tenang untuk mereka yang autistik, dia tenang untuk semua orang.
Betul?
So now kita dah sampai masa lah untuk kita belajar apa yang boleh membuatkan not just a certain population je suka, tapi untuk semualah.
So So basically katalah ada parents yang membuat permintaan untuk anak dia dan kita tolonglah support, right? You're saying that we should support that ataupun kita sendiri yang present the idea. Sebab kadang-kadang family tu sendiri segan nak meminta.
Betul.
Dia kata asyik kita ni asyik minta all the accommodation and all that. So why don't you do it? They say, I minta. You know? So it's like, okay, I'm willing to do this. So lepas tu kita pun rasa lah macam ada that kind of support, right? And of course again at that PIBG level lah. Banyak parents especially kalau dekat Malaysia ni di sekolah kebangsaan sangat bergantung harap dengan peranan PIBG.
Oh, yes.
You know, the parents like you, so you know you can get involved and please help lah on behalf of the other families, you know. That's what it is, because of course ada episod yang terdahulu daripada ni kita telah menyebut tentang apakah penyesuaian yang boleh kita buatkan dalam learning context di sekolah and all that. Now we're saying what is it that you can do when that comes up, right? Why are we talking about this again? Because sebagai seorang yang berkaitan dengan sekolah tu, bolehlah kita bantu dan bergantunglah apa peranan kita. Adakah kita parents di situ, cikgu ke, ataupun mungkin di pentadbiran, right? There's definitely things that you can do. Okay, so Desiree, I want to jump back to you because nak sebut juga what about especially in IPTs, ya? Like we have recently kan di Kiwanis ada menganjurkan simposium berkaitan dengan pendidikan khas.
Yes.
Dan kita dapat mendengar pengalaman daripada student yang neurodivergent sendiri, apakah pengalaman di IPT and all that. Can you share a little bit of what you heard about and then what can we do to make that difference?
I think one of the key things that the speaker spoke about that really made me feel a bit sad was the not feeling included bit. Kan?
The social part.
The social part, because memang social part tu memang sangat challenging untuk mereka yang neurotypical pun memang challenging.
Memang.
So can you imagine when someone is neurodivergent, social communication challenges, nak berkawan tapi tak pandai, and then feeling, what I got from his sharing is dia rasa excluded. And memang sangat sedih lah. I mean, I want to give credit to the IPTs who are trying. They are trying to be more inclusive. But this is coming dari management level. The cikgu, the pensyarah, the management. Tetapi is anyone doing anything with the students tak? Untuk memberi kesedaran? Or is it just assumed that, okay, let's put the person in and like sink or swim lah.
Yeah.
Right. So that is my thought and that is my concern. And
so,
I think
kepimpinan tu dan maklumat tu dan pengetahuan tu adakah ia turun sampai ke tahap student body, right?
Yes.
But yes, the shout out, kita nak bagi shout out ya. IIUM, USM. Apparently the three of you the best dari segi sokongan terhadap student yang OKU dan neurodivergent. And we hope that everybody else will also
follow suit.
Will also catch up. Yes, you're right. The social part was really sad. So bila mendengar dia sebut dia cambaran dia kat sekolah bukan apa yang dia terpaksa belajar dekat kelas. Tapi he was not included. So what we are trying to say out there, especially katalah we have students listening ataupun parents of students, you know, this was a perfect opportunity untuk mengenali dengan lebih dekat, memberi peluang, memberi sokongan sebab it was a class project kan?
Yes.
Class project di mana minta untuk form groups. So make a group, do a project together. And yang speaker lah pada simposium ni dia kata dia terasa tersisih, tak ada siapa pilih dia untuk join group. That was so sad, but that was a perfect way. Because it was not like macam mana daripada jauh nampak dia dekat kantin tak tahu macam mana. Bukan tak nak tolong, tak kesian pada dia, tapi takkanlah kita nak pergi je redah je kat situ. But this was like you could have
used it as an opportunity.
Yes, to try to be friends ke, atau tak boleh. Yelah, kita tak boleh paksa orang berkawan, tapi semua orang boleh friendly. Sungguh pun tak sanggup nak jadi friend. Kan? Friendly is a thing. And you know, before we finish up this segment, Anit, because you got a boy now who is in an IPTS.
Yes, and I actually think that when they have so many festivals in places like IPTs, why don't you have 1 week of diversity and inclusion to include neurodiversity and awareness
sebagai tema?
Sebagai tema.
Okay.
I think that would be a good thing, because when I remember Nirav was in school, in secondary school, one of the assemblies, they asked him to present. And he worked very hard on his PowerPoint to present to everybody what neurodiversity was, and from his lens. And the teachers actually said that really helped, and a lot of people after that still wanted to get to know him, because that was the first time they had heard him speak. And they finally understood what was different. So I think something similar in college, where people are more, or university, because in the end university is unity through diversity. And if you can have a rock week, you can have a week where you're
sustainability, environment, all this,
and everything else, and learning and giving back and community service. I think this would be, not even asking for a week. Let's start with a day.
Okay.
Just
organize disability awareness and things like that.
You have Pink Ribbon Month, so why not? Why not?
If you don't know where to start, give us a shout out. We'll give you some suggestions.
Yes.
And then boleh je benda ni jadi student initiative. Kan tak semestinya datang daripada pihak universiti, right? Students pun boleh. Dia orang pun boleh buatlah whatever lah, pesta masing-masing ke, ataupun just organize. And then I think bila kita nak menyambut something, itulah peluang untuk belajar pasal that something. Right?
Walaupun nak buat poster ke, nak just to say, do we have a calming tent for somebody who's neurodivergent, because it's going to be very crowded, and is there a place for them to be at?
Actually, that is the other angle. All the other pesta that you sambut, can you make sure it's a bit more inclusive? So not just buatkan pesta untuk meningkatkan kesedaran, tetapi adakah pesta-pesta sekarang ni, and then especially the one yang telah menjadi acara tahunan, maybe it's time to do a review, kan? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, memang all the IPTs, IPTA at least yang tadi kita sebut, shout out untuk yang 3 tu, kan? Sekarang ni IPTA mesti memerlukan plan strategik untuk mewujudkan suasana yang lebih inklusif, and they're supposed to share their policies. They have to have a disability services unit. So semua IPTA dah ada disability services unit. Then they have a strategic plan. Yang ketiga is that they have to do something that is connected to the sort of, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's like the culture. So macam mana nak meningkatkan kesedaran untuk merubah I think just like the outlook and how the school, the whole place, like this, from the student body to the faculty to the staff, boleh menjadi atau mewujudkan satu kampus yang memang lebih inklusif, right? So I don't know about you, Dazri, but I was so encouraged to hear that our IPTAs adalah pada tahap tu, mungkin yelah tak sama, tapi dari segi dasar dah ada. Dari segi dasar dah ada,
really,
kan?
Very encouraging.
So it's really cool. Didi, anything else to say on the subject of schools? Otherwise, we'll take a break.
I think kita sebagai parents yang dah tahu pasal autism ni dan ada anak-anak di IPTA, IPTS, di sekolah-sekolah, please be little advocate whenever we can, at least untuk anak kita. Dan ialah untuk pada tahap level tu, mungkin advocate lain macam what Dazri did, what Nori, and both of you, I'm just really proud of you guys, what you've done last weekend. So don't just wait, tunggu orang lain yang usahakan. Kita, at least for our own child, please speak up, please help the school, help the institution that your children are going to understand what your children needs lah.
Yeah, that's true. Apa yang kita minta tu, kita pun sanggup memberilah sepatutnya, kan? I think we can do that. Okay, let's take a break, and then bila kita kembali di segmen yang kedua, kita akan sebut tentang sokongan kepada neurodivergent di tempat-tempat kerja. Alright, see you in a bit. Hi, welcome back. Segmen kedua, episod ke-42. Ya, kita sedang membincangkan pada hari ini bagaimana siapa-siapa di antara kita boleh memberi sokongan kepada seorang individu OKAU atau neurodivergent di suasana persekolahan. Dan sekarang ni kita nak menyebut tentang tempat kerja pula, right? How we gonna extend that support. So I think tadi masa break, Desiree, you said you wanted to jump in first. Silakan.
Yes, so sebelum we go into the nitty-gritty details on workplace support and all that, saya nak kongsi sedikit dari symposium last weekend, Kiwanis Malaysia Academy Symposium. Keynote speaker kami was Datuk Dr. Amar Singh. He prefers to be known as just Amar. I'm saying that so he hears me. I call you just Amar. Dan dalam keynote dia, I like that he highlighted the fact that being inclusive sebenarnya benefitnya bukan sahaja kepada mereka yang neurodivergent atau mereka dengan kelainan keupayaan, right? Or those with disabilities. Actually, it benefits everybody because we are making accommodations or adjustments so that there's a place for everyone. So sebenarnya everyone will feel included, everyone will have a space, everyone will feel comfortable. Dan saya tahu Anit ada a very good example of that later. And the other thing that Amar brought up is that he said he would like to sell inclusion as a business model. So this is another ask I think we can ask from the community. Let's look at it from a business model as well. Bukan selalu charity lah. It doesn't always have to be a charity angle. So for example, Amar gave the example of he being an avid bird watcher.
Okay.
Kan? So bird watching ni memang orang dari luar negara akan datang ke Malaysia. Actually we have some pretty awesome and rare birds in our country. So katakanlah boleh buat satu company yang sells bird watching packages that are inclusive.
Okay, ni idea untuk syarikat pelancongan lah.
Yes.
Okay.
Boleh
sebagai
pelancongan.
contoh.
Or it can even be for, I don't know, school trips. It could be an educational platform. Right, for example, but the point is looking at inclusion as well from a business model. So whatever business, bird watching ni satu contoh sahaja. Contohnya lah, katakan saya sekarang my tuition center is memang academic based, tetapi boleh je I can consider, which I have been considering, to make it more inclusive. Kan? As a business model. Kan?
So,
and the idea is not to charge more. Let me just put it out there. Idea ni bukan nak charge lebih. Tetapi when you are inclusive, you are inviting more customers. In my case, more students. Right? Tak semestinya saya kena increase my fees lah. I don't have to make it not affordable.
Okay,
kan?
So kira perkhidmatan tambahan lah.
Perkhidmatan tambahan.
Atau buat adjustment kepada apa-apa perkhidmatan yang sedia ada untuk menjadikan dia lebih inklusif.
Macam Didi kata sebelum ni, kalau ada apa-apa hotel ataupun tempat pelancongan yang inklusif, it sells better.
Yeah.
Because among the community, we will all say, hey, that was a very good experience. Jom pergi sana. So it can be a family bonding trip where everybody feels included. So it's that's a very good.
Kita dah ada contoh bisnes macam tu kan.
Ada.
Shopping malls. There are more and more shopping malls now. So after the Sunway people did it, now one utama is the recent one yang ada sensory room kan. Ni di Lembah Kelang lah. So of course dia menganggap ni adalah satu tarikan.
Yes.
Kan, tarikan yang baru. And then I think we were saying that, kalau kita terpaksa memberi kira layanan tambahan, buat adjustment apa-apa yang tertentu, kadang-kadang ni macam boleh jadi VIP experience.
Yes,
kan.
absolutely.
Yeah, so it's good. Okay. Didi, jump in on the conversation please.
Well, kalau nak bercakap tentang apa tadi, support workplace. Okay. I think ada satu yang kita perlu tolak tepi, satu phrase ni, takkan itu pun tak tahu. Contohnya, kalau saya minta Nori untuk masak puding, satu jenis puding yang you tak pernah masak pun, and then bila you cuba juga, dan tak jadi macam apa yang I expect.
That's probably going to be very true for Nuri making pudding, yes. And then
Okay, so kan macam kalau we keep thinking kan bila ada staff baru yang masuk, I always like kalau kita cakap pasal nak embrace neurodiversity apa semua, tak semestinya datang dengan label. Oh, dia datang dia autistic. Whoever who comes, a new person who comes into the office setting ke employment place kan, kalau kita selalu rasa macam kita dah letak expectation, you perlu ada this soft skill, this common sense. We think it's common. Tapi bila cakap pasal neurodivergent, there are things that is not common for them. Selagi dia tak melaluinya, selagi dia tak ada experience, selagi dia tidak melalui, dia tak dapat faham.
Yeah, it's not natural kan?
It's not natural for them. So kalau kita keep saying, takkan itu pun tak tahu. Sebenarnya memang tak tahu. Jadi tolonglah jangan ada selalu rasa macam ini kan common sense je. You dah kerja, you dah ada degree, tapi kenapa macam ni? You dah kerja kan? You patut faham. You patut tahu. All this expectation kan. Bila expectation tu tidak dipenuhi oleh pekerja yang baru ni, siapa yang marah dulu? Siapa yang tantrum dulu? Lepas tu kita nak salahkan neurodivergent dan tak ready untuk bekerja di workplace. So it's both ways sebenarnya. Dan kita percayalah dari pihak neurodivergent tu sendiri, ibu bapa, keluarga dan education setting kan, dia punya lecturer, all the courses memang cuba sedaya upaya untuk mempersiapkan, nak bagi dia ready kan untuk workplace. Bagi dia ready. Tapi kalau workplace, colleague yang nak menerima mereka di tempat kerja ada this attitude of all this expectation apa kan, you perlu tahu ni, takkan tu pun tak tahu. Rasa nak marah je, rasa macam expectation dia sama macam pekerja yang lain. Tak boleh lah sebab kita perlu lebih bersabar dan perlu faham yang mereka berbeza. Dan of course sebenarnya all this adaptation, accommodation yang perlu disediakan pun sebenarnya memberi manfaat kepada orang lain juga, bukan sekadar untuk mereka yang neurodivergent kan, yang kalau kita ada kami space contohnya. So and then kalau kita bagi instruction dalam bentuk bertulis macam tadi bincang dalam ni kan, instruction dalam bentuk bertulis membantu semua orang daripada kan verbal. Lepas tu nanti bila tanya balik, bos tu boleh pula ulang arahan tapi dah lain pula sequence dia, dah lain pula request dia. So sebenarnya all this kan perlukan adjustment dari segi work culture, dari segi workflow pun. It takes a lot of changes, a lot of effort. Definitely tak senang lah, memang susah. Tapi once you do it, it will benefit orang lain juga, boleh benefit the organisation itself lah, insyaAllah. Sebab kan bila benda ni, the communication way pun dah berubah kepada yang lebih baik, kepada yang lebih clear, dengan keadaan environment yang lebih baik, bukan sekadar dari segi culture, hubungan kan, connection, communication, tapi dari segi fizikal juga, the layout of the office, the signage also, because we talk about universal design before, so yang tu tak payah ulang lagi. Tapi please, kita bukan mohon sesuatu yang hanya boleh benefit seorang sahaja. Tak. These changes will memberi kebaikan kepada orang lain. So think about that and stop. Betul tak yang saya kata macam stop with this thinking, takkan itu pun tak tahu. Sebab kan
jangan buat andaian lah.
Jangan buat andaian. Yes. Because if you sendiri yang buat expectation, you yang expect orang macam tu, lepas tu you sendiri yang marah. So sekarang ni masalah tantrum siapa? So so that's my point lah. Like do away with this mentality of takkan itu pun tak tahu.
Can I just add that based on what Didi said kan, clearer communication kan, in any organisation, from say a superior to someone working for them, is going to benefit everyone. Sebab kita pun yang kerja, I've worked before in the corporate world, and when communication is not clear from my boss, it's very challenging. And lebih challenging bila boss akan tukar pendapat, tukar arahan every few minutes, every few hours. So cuba bayangkan orang yang neurodivergent kan. So if we can encourage clearer communication for everyone, like what Didi said, we're not asking untuk seorang saja. Ini akan benefit semua orang, and in return you won't have such high turnover in your company.
So, this one is like, actually probably should have mentioned in the school context, but I heard one of the IPTA yang ceritakan kisah tu, dia when they find out that there's a student attending a particular lecture, or that the student is part of a particular class, other students now nak pergi that same lecture because the teacher will be clearer, will go slower, talk about the notes, all that better. So they're like, I pun nak join that kuliah. So it's true. It's true about that. And I'm sure in the office setting pun macam tu. Anik, please tell us about the example you heard where it and the neurodivergent person said, right?
Neurodivergent person said. But before that, can I just say the IPTA and breaking things down? I think it is always a reality check of, even at the workplace, when you need to teach somebody new, you are a little bit more patient. When somebody who has been with you for a while, you expect them to know the process. So with somebody who is neurodivergent, or even you make those accommodations, and when you do, it even benefits those around who have been around for some time to do a refresher and say, oh yes, maybe this is why I just started doing it mechanically and now I understand the process. So I feel it always benefits, like Desiree said. And I need to share what I heard yesterday on the ASCAP meeting that was going on, the UN ASCAP meeting, where there was...
Apa ASCAP meeting?
The United Nations had this meeting of women with disabilities, and of women and girls with disabilities, and their issues and their challenges. And one of the change makers was person from Australia, and she said in the workplace, because of her hidden disability, she requires a calming tent or a calming space, and it had worked for her, and she had started working there and become very much a part of the culture and the fabric of the office, till during one review, one of the other colleagues of hers asked management, why can't we also use that calming room? She doesn't use it all the time. And management said, yes. And then management said, actually, we let the others down. We should have given them that accommodation too. So it took a neurodivergent person entering the workplace for there to be that facility, but then it benefited everybody else because everybody started using it. So the story was...
And what did the neurodivergent person, what did she herself have to say?
She was happy because she said she didn't feel excluded or different, because it was no longer something that was for her, something that she needed, then became a source of comfort and a place for everybody, kan?
Okay.
So semua orang rasa macam, bestnya kita pun nak buat lah. Macam lah fidget cube dengan squishy toys semua kan? Yeah. So that was I thought that was so impactful.
No, that's so cool. And then I want to say that again, kita bukan tak pernah membuat pengubahsuaian seperti ni. I think at one point in time, especially dekat dalam industri tertentu, dan tempat kerja tertentu, dulu tak ada orang wanita. Sekarang dah ada orang wanita. And then dulu kita tak ada fikirkan atau mengambil kira things like bagaimana nak beri sokongan tambahan, sebagai contoh apa-apa fasiliti untuk kanak-kanak. So of course, maybe this is talking about bigger companies, but if we go back to just wanita, things like breastfeeding rooms for mothers, Dulu kita tak ada nak terfikirkan benda ni semua, tapi sekarang macam dah jadi kebiasaan. Sebab kita sekarang dah ada ruang untuk orang beribadah. Dan ni sekarang untuk ibu pun ada ruang lah untuk continue to menyusu ataupun pump kalau kena pump.
And then storage of breast milk sampai dia kena balik.
Yes, so like a fridge. So ada
chair.
Yes, ada penyesuaian dan perubahan yang berlaku secara fizikal di tempat kerja. Yang pernah kita buat lah untuk sebab-sebab yang lain. So kali ni kita ada another category of sebab. So I just like to remind people like, yes, I know it's true, sometimes it can be difficult, macam Didi sebut tadi. Bukan kita nak kata benda ni tak mengambil masa, tak mengambil usaha tambahan or whatever. Of course it takes effort, and yes, it's true, it can be hard, but I also want to say not all of it is that hard.
Yeah.
Okay, and kita ada pengalaman of that. Again, we have that. We talk about this a lot in our episodes. Yang dulu macam kita kata, bila kita mengambil perat tentang pemakanan seseorang mengikut keperluan dia ataupun keperluan dari segi keagamaan, right? Like it's like, okay, you're just a vegetarian. But so now we think about like maybe the picky eater atau atas sebab-sebab yang lain.
Food allergies.
Yeah, food allergies, or you pick a place you want to go for your so simple thing. Office colleagues, things around, somebody with a wheelchair, you want to go out for lunch together. Pick lah a place yang mudah untuk your colleague yang ada wheelchair ikut sekali. Janganlah pergi kat tempat-tempat yang sempit-sempit and then things rush or dia tak dapat pergi, because it's just again the thinking of the effort. Just like kalau kita ada office yang mana very majmuk muhibah, all that, they want to eat together, then there's a Muslim colleague, they'll go to a place lah yang halal friendly, for example. So there are things that you can do. So think about it as somebody in the company, and then you hear a new colleague is going to come in, happens to be ADHD or autistic or something. So ada briefing whatever daripada management, kita ambil lah effort sikit untuk macam mana nak make this person feel welcome. We do that with everybody. It's just now we have to have new knowledge and information, right, about how to make this kind of person pula, this this new team member welcome. And I think same situation yang kita sebut dekat persekitaran sekolah, IPT, all that. You have meetings where you have to pecah in group, you have tasks and whatever to do. Inilah time untuk invite orang ni to be part of your discussion, join your task force ke jawatan kuasa apa ke committee, things like that. And
it's just about being mindful that a person with who is on a wheelchair will not be able to reach a rostrum, so there has to be a microphone placed separately for them. It's little accommodations like that for those who are deaf, to either have captions if it's on webinars or a sign language interpreter. So if you just make small accommodations, everybody feels included.
Can I give another example?
Sure.
I mean, this is not necessarily with neurodivergent in mind, but the symposium that we just organized. Previous feedback was from some of the Kiwani centers that are Mandarin speaking. They said they didn't attend because they couldn't understand. It's not in Mandarin. And so my thought when I became the organizing chair, I said, hey, when we say inclusive, we're not saying just having a ramp for our wheelchair user friends or being neurodivergent friendly, but we want to be friendly to those who can't understand English. So we actually did have a translator on site for Mandarin, and we did it via Zoom. So all you need to do is have an earpiece, and the translator will give the gist through a Zoom, and it didn't cost us anything.
Right.
The Zoom account, we borrowed someone's Zoom account. The person who translated volunteered her time to do it. So it can be done. Do you want to do it, I think? How badly do you want to do it?
I want to jump in because you spoke about volunteering that time. But I think even if you have to pay for that service, I don't think it's much to ask for of that sort of accommodation. Sebab orang yang memberi masa pun kadang-kadang perlulah diberi ganjaran yang sepatutnya.
Yes.
So because it is a service that is provided to make everybody feel included. And kalau kita ada budget yang lebih sikit, bolehlah kita buat
Yes, absolutely.
pengubahsuaian yang sepatutnya untuk memastikan kesemua orang rasa mereka belong ataupun rasa part of the entire group.
Before we finish, I think I would just want to talk about, okay, how do we support if we know a colleague is the one yang has a family member who is neurodivergent, right? So it's like, I think, for example, certain things now, especially bigger companies, diorang dah adalah keprihatinan dan dah buat things like survey to ask, right? In your family, especially if you have children, what if any conditions that your child might have and things like that. And I think there's some now friendly policies that become part of a package yang membuatkan satu jawatan atau pekerjaan tu menjadi lebih menarik kan. I don't know, Didi, do you want to share a little bit about being a Petronas family or the things that you've heard that, you know, Petronas are willing to do to support families who have individuals or kids who are neurodivergent or with disabilities? Big companies are making this effort now, and things are too. So if you're part of HR, you're part of the leadership and all that, please put these policies in place. And I think sebagai rakan kerja pun boleh bagi sokongan kan. Didi, can you jump in?
Well, dari company yang I don't know, I don't think my husband would agree like to ni, but okay, I just want to share about this company, oil and gas company, where they support, the kind of support that they give. Firstly, selepas anak mendapat diagnosis, of course dia ada medical benefit kan, jadi bila pergi assessment dibayarlah, dibiayai oleh under medical benefit. Dan kemudian berbeza dengan insurans perubatan yang lain, di mana terapi macam speech therapist, occupational therapist pun dibiayai oleh medical benefit tersebut. Dan ada juga company yang saya dengar, I think it's one of the banks yang membiayai terapi sepanjang hidup.
Wow.
Anak istimewa. Itu yang saya dengar. Tapi for Petronas, it's not seumur hidup lah. Dia ada cap dia lah untuk beberapa tahun. Kemudian ada juga allowance untuk anak-anak OKU. So dia sangat membantulah, sebab of course perbelanjaan untuk anak-anak istimewa ni perlu lebih lah, sebab dari segi terapi, dari segi pendidikan pun bukan semua sesuai untuk pergi ke sekolah biasa kan, sekolah kebangsaan. So mungkin perlukan kelas-kelas lain, ataupun perlu jumpa psikologis ke. So all this extra cost. Tapi dari segi support, adanya support group di kalangan pekerja pun sangat membantu, because once you bekerja dalam satu company dan you ada fellow kawan-kawan yang ada anak istimewa juga, the kind of support tu, bila you ada understanding yang sama kan, they work at the same place, in the same nature of job, so the way they change ideas, share information, of course it really helps lah, sebab the fact that they work for the same company kan. So those are the things that employer boleh bantulah, dari segi kewangan, of course, dari segi understanding, but not as much as kalau pekerja di jabatan kerajaan, di mana mereka ada pekeliling kan, yang membenarkan mereka untuk mungkin masuk kerja sedikit lambat, ataupun balik awal, ataupun taking time off untuk anak-anak mendapatkan rawatan. So those are also the kind of supports that pekerja-pekerja dalam sebenarnya mana-mana company pun memerlukan, dan sangat dihargailah all those kind of
flexibility. No, and just sometimes it's just as a team member, right? Then if you already know that kind of situation, you know it's a bit different, right? It's not quite the same as having a typical child be kind lah, support lah your team member. Maybe that is the team member yang tak payah stay for a lot beyond your office hours pun. Maybe that is the team member that you allow to go home a bit earlier. You have some flexibility about how they play their role. Maybe they can submit,
Work from home.
There's many things you can do that I think tak semestinya sampai pada tahap boss saja.
Yep.
Right? To decide just between, support each other lah kan. Support your colleagues and things like that.
Lagi satu Nori, so much of like kita rasa macam keluarga yang ada anak you anak neurodivergent ni asyik memerlukan time off lah apalah kan. Tapi untuk keluarga lain, think of like once you facing other kind of challenges yang memerlukan perhatian macam tu juga. Contoh pasangan you sendiri tak sihat ke, your own parents. And then anak you yang bukan you tapi ada penyakit lain ke. So all this life challenges, it can happen at any time. It's just that kita yang ada anak autism ni, kalau kita cakap pasal terapi ni, perlu berpanjangan lah dan punya the kind of attention tu lain lah kan. Jadi jangan rasa keluarga yang memerlukan sedikit all this accommodation ni menyusahkan, sebab kita pun tak tahu bila masa kita yang menghadapi, yang kita pula yang memerlukan not kata simpati tapi orang lain untuk faham keadaan kita.
So I just want to say that for neurodivergence, kadang-kadang meeting deadlines and working under that kind of pressure can be difficult in a workplace.
Yep.
So as a colleague, I think what you can do is remind on deadlines, check on them on the progress, and offer to help just to meet it, because together we rise and divided we fall. So as a team, you can actually do this together. And in the end, you will get you will learn together, and next time I'm sure the same person will help you out at a time when you least expect it.
And I tell you, for things like certain kind of jobs that involve things that we know some neurodivergents are very good at.
Very, very good.
Certain kind of data crunching, analysis, benda-benda yang dia bagus, dia akan membuat lagi laju daripada orang lain. So maybe that is some of those things di mana that's when you ask for that help lah.
Yes.
Or you know how to again work with strengths.
Yes.
Correct.
So bila nak membagi tugas tu atau all this, kita lihatlah kepada apa yang kesesuaian dari segi kerja-kerja tertentu and things like that. So that thing goes back to communication, getting to know the person, mengambil kisah lah sikit, right?
Kadang-kadang mereka dah buat kerja tu tapi tak hantar sebab lupa. Atau masa tu dah nak pergi lunch, and what they're like, they lose their focus, and then when they come back and they
especially person with ADHD, for example,
Exactly.
the distraction in attention type,
Executive functioning.
and the executive functioning becomes a problem. So a reminder by a colleague, dah hantar ke belum? Oh, lupa. It happens to us as well.
Yes.
So but if you put a alert or reminder, or if you see your colleague requires it, tell them to use their phone to put a reminder, or prompt them. So some sort of prompts definitely help.
Yeah. And again, that same kind of kindness that we brought up, kalau dekat sekolah, kadang-kadang kita yang meminta tu on behalf of somebody, things like that. So dia pun tak rasa lah dia pun ni macam terlalu, I don't know, like dia ni pelik dengan sangat berbeza. You don't want them to stick out so much. So sometimes if you're requesting for something, maybe make that request lah on behalf of your colleague. Maybe it's not super important to you, but you're like, okay, this is my team member, I'm gonna ask. So tak adalah nampak macam dia je yang asyik nak meminta. Same thing, right? We mentioned about that in the school context and things like that. Just try to be this like helpful kind of person. It would be really good. And I think sekarang ni kita dah tahu, like for example, syarikat besar, their hiring policies now yang dia memang nak memberi fokus kepada neurodivergent. I really appreciate hearing that they said this is a good decision for management level staff to build their skills
And leadership.
So it's not a charity situation lah.
Yeah.
Ni
Absolutely.
bukan atas dasar kasihan lah, kebajikan lah, nak make sure like okay lah, inilah macam kali ni kita nak menunjukkan
CSR
lah.
lah.
Not just CSR whatever, like sometimes you have to
Beyond
want
that.
to fulfill all these goals like ESG and things like that.
Yeah.
But really try to look at it from an angle that that we know is going to benefit the whole place, institution. That's why there are these new diversity policies, all that. We know it now. And it has a direct effect to your bottom line. So support that. Support the company policy of doing that. Janganlah lepas tu keluar satu perkeliling ke announcement ni, whatever we're going to make the change. You're like,
Hantar memo
of
pada
course
HR.
lah, memo all that. Ni kadang-kadang kita pun fed up lah, banyaknya memo, banyaknya perubahan whatever at the company. But I mean, come on lah. Help out a bit.
change.
Yeah, embrace change, get with the program. The sooner then benda ni kalau dah nak jadi pun, you nak bantah ke apa, you are the one yang continuing to menyiksa diri. The faster you get on board with it and just move on, then let's go. And of course, kita balik kepada Didi punya point. Jangan kita anggap benda tu diperlukan oleh orang lain sahaja. Satu hari mungkin kita
We
yang
will need it.
memerlukan
Yep.
bantuan dan sokongan. Don't forget, So just be a little bit kinder, be a bit more open. It's good for you.
Yes.
Okay. I think we can wrap up.
Yep.
Should be good. Ada siapa-siapa nak add on anything before we say goodbye?
No.
Okay. Didi, okay? Ya, alright. Okay. So, terima kasih mengikuti episod kami. This is one of those where we managed to do our part 2 as well. Jangan lupa kalau anda telah tune in mendengar episod ini, bahagian pertama adalah episod ke-40 ya, di mana kita menyebut tentang bagaimana untuk menyokong dan menjadi sebahagian daripada komuniti Neurodivergent sebagai ahli masyarakat dan juga sebagai sahabat atau ahli keluarga. So that is episod ke-40. And then we are finishing up this one, episod ke-42, where we are talking about it dalam konteks sekolah atau institusi pengajian dan juga di tempat kerja. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jangan lupa ya, selain daripada YouTube dan Spotify, kami juga ada di social media, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Please like, share, comment, follow, subscribe. Please subscribe. We're so happy that we crossed over 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Alhamdulillah. So yes, we would love to hear more from you dan kita insyaAllah akan respond kepada komen. We are very responsive ya, by the way. So kalau ada permintaan dan apa-apa pandangan untuk KFM, silalah ya. So terima kasih. Dan kita akan jumpa lagi insyaAllah the next episode. Bye.
Bye.